Rebecca, your picture's live.
And it was all going so well.
All right, here we are. I think we're up and live. Welcome to the fourth semi-annual, I don't know, bi-monthly ZAPCon after hours. So we're super glad to have a very special one today with Simon Bennetts, the founder and project lead for the Z attack proxy, or as we affectionately know it, ZAP. Hey, Simon. Clearly, online protocol allows me to say good morning to you, even though it's clearly not morning where you are.
It's not morning everywhere, is it? But hey, yeah, it's right. Still morning online.
Awesome. Hey, everyone who is joining us on YouTube, please join us on Discord as well. We're going to field questions from that Discord channel. I'll help moderate some of those questions. Hopefully we'll get answers to most of the questions that everyone asks. But first of all, Simon, can you just kind of give us an update? We had an update from you at ZAPCon, back at the original ZAPCon, and you were talking about things the ZAP core team was working on. Can you kind of give us a little update about what the ZAP core team is working on at the moment?
Sure. So one of the things we announced then was the automation framework, and that has been progressing very well. We've done a couple of releases there. It's still alpha quality, but you can play around with it. And we've actually changed the baseline scan so that if you only use some of the core features, then it'll actually use the automation framework instead of using the Python scripts, which kind of use the ZAP API and the ZAP daemon mode. So the automation framework is progressing well, but there's still a lot to do. We're actually working on various things to do with that, including a user interface for it to make it even easier to kind of set up and play around with. The other main announcement we had was the reporting add-on, which kind of replaced the horrible Paros reports that have been there since the year dot. And that is going very well as well. And that's actually got to beta quality. So we've done quite a lot there. And we had we'll still have the reporting competition. And we've actually had somebody so we've actually awarded one of those prizes. And those reports are the new reports they've created. Templates are actually part of the latest report release, and so you can try them out right away. So that's progressing very well. And actually in the core, the next weekly, we will no longer be using the old Paros reporting. We've replaced those with the reporting add-on. So if you use the core API or actually accessing reports from the command line, that'll be using the reporting add-on as well. So those are the things I announced at ZAPCon. Mm-hmm. Since then, we've had 2 Google Summer of Code project start. So we've had retest. So that's a project which will make it much easier for people to retest vulnerabilities that ZAP finds. So instead of having to rerun your whole spider and active scan everything, it'll focus particularly on the vulnerabilities you want to retest. So it'll be much quicker. And that is actually using the automation framework because it's proved so useful. So we've got one student working on that. And the other student is working on out-of-band testing. So this is where you actually you make attacks that you don't get the responses directly, but the responses get sent to another server, or they do if your target is vulnerable. And that's something we're not aware of any other open source projects actually supporting this, but we're working on it right now. So those are 2 Google Summer of Code projects. There's a lot of work going on the ZAP build route. The releasing the weekly and releasing add-ons is so much easier. It used to be really complicated and time-consuming for the ZAP core team. And now, thanks to some work which has been sponsored by OWASP, we've got GitHub Actions, and you just run the action and everything happens by magic. We just have to kind of double-check things and approve them, and everything works. And we're also working on Crowdin integration. So Crowdin is the service we use for translating ZAP. And ZAP is one of the very few security tools that is translated or is internationalized and translated into loads of different languages. But that integration with Crowdin is broken a while ago, and we're hoping that will be re-enabled very, very shortly, which would be really great to be able to translate the latest ZAP changes. There's a lot of standard maintenance going on. There's a lot of things that, we just got to keep on ticking away and improving things in the background. We actually had a new contributor, get in touch with us recently, and he's been working on replacing the ZAP database layer with a much more modern framework, which was really great to hear. So we're hoping that will get into the ZAP core before too long as well. But obviously, all these things depend on people who are contributing and volunteering to ZAP. So we can't give exact dates, but those are the things we're working on at the moment.
Yeah, so just a little bit of stuff. You're tackling like one or two things here and there.
Yep.
So tons of stuff going on ZAP.
Tons of stuff.
Core team is kind of focused on automation and the reporting stuff, really in the reporting competition. For the people that have joined us and who are good at making pretty HTML content, how can they join that reporting contest? How can you get involved?
Sure. So we wrote a blog post, which someone will hopefully be able to post in channel and on the YouTube comments as well. But if you go to zaproxy.org and then go to the blog and go back a few weeks, just scroll down a bit, you'll find the reporting competition. Now, on that page, it says that the reporting competition will end on July the 1st. Well, I can announce that we've decided to extend it. So it's going to be extended for another 3 months. I said we've awarded one prize. So it's $100 per template. We actually awarded 200 because the contributor had loads of different variants of that templates, which make it the different themes, which is really great. I said those template themes are included in the latest release of the reporting add-on, so you can try them out right now. We've got another one, a pull request, which is getting closer, just got a few things, so that will probably be $300 after the 1,000 or so, but that means there's plenty of money to be won. And we've got a whole load of features we've added to make it easier to add more data to the reports. And if you can think of anything that you want to report on that isn't in there, let us know and we'll do our best to get it in there.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you are really good, like I mentioned, at making pretty reports and templates, can think and you think, wow, it's early. It is actually early for me. So if you think you can contribute a nice, clean report or something that's super valuable, or even just like a little bit better than the old Peros reports, which isn't super hard, check out the details on the reporting module and Simon's blog post on zaproxy.org about the reporting competition. Get your contribution in there and win some extra dough. That'd be great. Simon, we've got a couple of questions in the Discord already. I think one of the good ones to maybe start with is for people who are new to ZAP, talk about what dynamic application security testing is and why you think it's valuable.
Sure. So there are various types of application security testing. So you've heard of SAST and IAST and things. DAST, dynamic application security testing, is essentially it's attacking the application in a similar way that malicious attackers will. So you need a running version of your application, and a DAST tool like ZAP acts like a malicious attacker. So it is actually attacking the interfaces that your application provides. If you haven't done any security testing on your service, then I think DAST is a really good place to start, because that's what the attackers will see. That's what they'll be able to do. There are other types like SAST, so the kind of source code analysis. And, I certainly don't want to get into the argument about which is better. All the different forms of security testing, they test in different ways. They have different strengths and weaknesses. You should really try them all. If you're starting a new project, then it's great to get your static analysis in really early, because then as you develop, it'll report things, you can fix them. But if you've got an existing project that's old, been around for a while, and you haven't done any static analysis, the first time you run a report, static report, you'll get loads of things reported. Most of them won't be that important. It'll be difficult to filter through things. So existing projects, start with DAST. new project, start with SAST probably, but then get Dast in as soon as you have something running, because they test different things. Then you have IAST, where you're actually instrumenting the application, which is really great. But typically you need to have a tool like Zap to run the Dast side to actually drive the IAST. And the IAST tool has to be compatible with whatever technology you're using. You often have to kind of change your build route to handle that. And there are very few open source IAST tools available. There used to be none, but I think there's at least one out there now. And then you've got software composition analysis, which is testing a different thing. It's kind of testing the components, the third-party components that your application uses, and that's really valuable. You should use that as soon as possible, as soon as you start building something, so that you can tell, if there are known problems with the components that you're using. So pretty much all software testing stuff is good, but try them out. See what works for you.
Yeah, totally. That's really good information. I usually say in the talks that I give, if you're starting new with application security, start with SCA and Dast if you've got a running application, because they both test different things. SCA is going, what version of libraries am I including in my project? And are there vulnerabilities associated with that? So that's just kind of a one-to-one match type thing. And then Dast, I think, does a really good job of, I've used Dast in a lot of different places. I think it does a really good job of testing the application in the context that a user would test it, or a bad person, and helps you surface quickly some of those easy to find, easy to fix type issues. Where SAST is like a little bit lower level, looks at almost all the things, and it's kind of hard to sort out what should I fix versus fix all the things. Good question out in the Discord channel. I love this this question from Kamudi. Hopefully I said that right. And it's the philosophical question, and he wants to know, what's your daily motivation on Zap, and how do you keep being so involved in this project after all these years? Somebody else may have moved on to something else. So he's just curious about your motivations and why you keep being involved with Zap.
Yeah, that is a good question. As I said, it's fun. I really enjoy it. I like hard problems, and security testing is a really hard problem. We have not solved it. We have not got, I don't believe that the current combination of DAST, SAST, IAST, SCA, all those other acronyms are as good as it gets. We can always do better. But it's not a simple problem. It's really complicated. There are so many edge cases and so many different ways of looking at it and so many different problems. So it's really hard. And it's something I think is actually having a lot of, Zap is having a really beneficial effect on the industry. So many people are using it. It is making the internet that little bit more secure. And it helps encourage our commercial competitors to get even better as well. So I think that, Zap is having a really positive effect on the industry and on the health of the internet. And yeah, I just enjoy it. There's so many more things I would like to do. If we had more contributors, we could do a lot more. So if you want to get involved, let me know.
Yeah, it's a good point. If someone did want to get involved with Zap, is there an easy how to get started kind of guide somewhere?
Sure. I mean, there's lots of different ways you can get involved. I mean, just giving Zap more publicity, whether it's like starring the repos or blogging about Zap and how you're using it. We've actually got a success stories section on the website. So, if you want to contribute a success story, please do. But if you want to actually get involved in the code, then there's a contributing doc in our main repo. And that will go through. So we have things like, we have a whole set of issues that are labeled ideal first bug or good first issues, which are hopefully things which are relatively straightforward and relatively well documented. So if you want to get stuck into the code, that's one good way. But things like the scan rules, the active and passive scan rules, those are often good things because Zap has become a bit of a beast now. So if you want to, if you start looking at the source code, there's so much going on. There's something like 35 different repos in the Zap GitHub organization, which is crazy. So it can be a bit of overwhelming. And the scan rules are nice because they're relatively focused. You can just kind of understand one particular area of ZAP. And, there's so many different test applications out there. I'm sure you can find one where ZAP doesn't report things as effectively as it could. So you can focus on those. So if you fancy getting involved in that kind of thing, I did write a couple of blog posts about those a while ago. It might be a little bit out of date, but they're still very relevant. But also just ping us on the ZAP developer group. That's linked off the ZAPCon.org. So yeah, get in touch with us. There's always fun things to do. And documentation, we've had some great contributions in documentation. Anything that an open source project needs, we need help with stuff, and we want people to get involved.
Yeah, awesome. I can say that I recently contributed as part of one of the active rule tests. And Simon's right. It is the easy way to get started inside the code. There's lots of really good examples, really good test reproductions that you can just kind of copy and paste and go to town with there. So if you know about application security and you know about tests that you'd like to see in ZAP, that's a great place to start. If you have one of the tests in ZAP that you think is inaccurate or could be better, also another awesome place to start, because that's one of the easier places to get into the code. Me being the exact type person that I am, I can type a little Java, just a little, and it was a good place to start for me. So I will second what Simon said there. Simon, I think there's a couple questions in here that in Discord that are really good, and I want answers to them too. So don't try to skip out on me here.
Yeah. Would I do that?
One of the key features of ZAP, Rutam, said one of the key features of ZAP is automation. Can you elaborate how we can achieve this and what all tools can be integrated for automation? So I think this is tied into the automation framework stuff, but it's a great question from Rutam.
Definitely. I think automation is one of ZAP's strengths. I think it's, from the feedback I've heard, it's the best DAS tool to integrate with any system. That includes all commercial ones as well. So we have various options. We do have a command line option where you can just run a very quick ZAP scan from the command line. That used to only support an XML report, but now the latest version of the Quick Start add-on means we're using the reporting add-on, so we can actually get reports out in HTML and JSON and Markdown as well. So it's kind of that you don't have many options with that, but it's quick and easy to do. Then if you're using Docker, I would recommend looking at the Docker actions because we've got two Docker actions. They're the package scan and the full scan. And they will be very easy to integrate with your repos. And what they will do is they will actually, you can configure them to raise issues if they find anything. So those are great ways to integrate that. And we've got blog posts on them, and we actually demonstrate how to do that with our own website, ZAPCon.org. Then we've got the package scans. So the package scans are implemented, they're included as part of our Docker images, and the Docker actions actually use the Docker images. So we have 3 package scans. We've got the baseline, we've got the full scan, and we've got an API scan, which is focused on APIs, surprisingly. They are much more flexible than the command line. But they're very powerful. But we have found that they can be a little bit tricky to extend once you get to certain boundaries, and they are restricted to Docker containers. So they don't have to be, but that's just the way they were implemented. So we do have at the other extreme, we have the daemon mode in the API. And with the daemon mode, what you can do is you can kick ZAP off daemon mode. So you get, it goes into the background. You don't have any user interface. And then you have the ZAP API. And the ZAP API is probably one of the most powerful in the industry. It gives you nearly complete control over ZAP. There's a couple of things you can't do, things like fuzzing, which tends to be more of a manual technique. We do plan to get everything controlled by the API. It's just we haven't got around to everything just yet. We've got a tracker issue for it though. So, you can control anything you like, and it's very similar to sitting in front of the ZAP desktop, except you're controlling everything via the API. Now, the feedback we found from that is that some people really love it and find it really powerful, and other people find it's a bit too much because what do you do? There's so many things that you can do. So that's why at ZAPCon earlier this year, I announced the automation framework, which I mentioned before. And the automation framework is kind of a stepping stone between the package scans and the daemon API. And what it does is means you have a YAML configuration file and you pass that to Zap, and that can run in line, and that can do all of the things you kind of expect it to, or you think Zap will typically need to do. So you can do the spidering with the standard spider and the Ajax spider. It'll do all the passive scanning. It'll do the active scanning. We can import OpenAPI, Swagger, GraphQL, and SOAP definitions. And when we're all extending it so to cover all sorts of things. So the idea is this will end up being, we hope, the way most people will actually automate Zap. And what we're doing is we're actually changing the package scans to use the automation framework under the hood. So if you use the package scans, you will end up using the automation framework in the end. And the fact that we're able to do that shows the power of the automation framework, and the fact we're reusing it for other things like this retest functionality just shows how effective I think it's going to be.
Awesome. In that vein, Ryan, I'm butchering all these names, guys. Sorry. If you're in Discord and I butchered your name, I apologize. I'm trying to give you a little shout out on YouTube here. But they were asking, is Docker the only way to run Zap without Zap being installed on your computer? And is it possible to create a context without having Zap installed, i.e. trying to create a script that can be run without having Zap installed?
Yeah, so Zap should run in any kind of container technology you like. We have the Docker images, but there's no reason, as long as you have a JVM, Java 8 at least, then Zap will run on that machine or in that container. I actually got it running on a Raspberry Pi years ago. It was a little bit slow, but it ran. Yeah, as long as your container supports Java 8 plus, then Zap will be able to run in there. And that's one advantage of the automation framework, is that you can run it from the command line and it doesn't depend on a container framework, whereas the package scans do depend on Docker. So if you have any other kind of container framework, and you've got, if Java is available, then you can run Zap and you can run the automation framework, and that will allow you to create context very easily. I mean, the daemon API mode, you will be able to do everything. So you can do everything that way, but we think the automation framework will be that bit easier. And if there are some container technologies you really think we should support as part of the core team, then let us know. Particularly if if you can help us out with creating them, because we might not be experts in everything. We don't want to adopt everything the community creates, but we're certainly look at adopting core things like the Docker images. They were originally created by a new contributor, and we adopted those. So please, create these things. Donate them, and just let us know and play around with these things. We want Zap to be used in as many environments as possible.
Awesome. Great information, Simon. Thank you. I'm just kind of sorting through some questions here in Discord. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a Discord link down below. You can definitely join us on Discord and ask questions in the Discord chat, and we'll try to get to all of them here, which means that I need to get back to Cheyenne's question about, are Node.js applications supported by Zap? And if yes, how to use the Zap API in a Node.js application? So I think there's maybe a two-part question here. One is, can it test Node.js applications? And the other one might be, can Node.js drive Zap?
Exactly. I think there's two separate questions. And I've now got a little kitten, a large cat actually, clawing my leg. So she might jump on my lap any second now, or maybe not. So basically, if an application, Here is Liz.
Perfect.
Say hi. So yes, basically, if an application has a web interface, so HTTP, HTTPS, then Zap will be able to test it. That's one advantage of Dast, is that it doesn't care what the application is implemented in. If you've got a COBOL application that has an HTTP, HTTPS interface, then Zap will be able to test it. So absolutely yes. Then it's, can you drive the Zap API from Node.js or any other technology? And again, the answer is yes. With Node.js, we do actually have a JavaScript client library. We have quite a few client libraries, both. So we've got Java, we've got Python, we've got JavaScript. I think there's a PHP one, but basically the API calls are pretty simple, so you can call them, but from anything that actually supports making HTTP calls. Yeah, that's so yes to both of those.
Awesome. Dirty Data Simon has a great question. How does the Zap team balance, prioritize, enhance? Sorry, let me start again. Here we go. This time with the right inflection. How does the Zap team balance or prioritize enhancements and features to enable newcomers, beginners, learners to Appsec to understand the value and output from Zap versus niche enhancements for advanced use cases?
Ooh, that is a good question.
I read that verbatim, so the punctuation is totally missing, which Dirty Data also admits in the Discord.
That is actually really hard. It's trying to work out, what we think we should be working on. And I mean, one thing about open source projects like Zap is, most of the people are volunteers, they're contributing what they want. So people, including the core team, tend to work on whatever they want. So if someone gets involved and says, I want to work on this niche activity, then great, we will let them. We might not focus as much effort on them as we would focus on some other people. So we kind of, if people are contributing things, then we're kind of balancing, well, we want to help new people, we want to help people get involved. But if they're doing something really out there, then we won't be able to spend as much time. Whereas if someone comes in and starts working on something which looks really important to us, it'd be like, oh, great, we'll try and spend more time with them. But generally, we try and answer all questions about Zap development and make it easier. We never know what's going to actually turn out to be really useful. So we just want people to get involved. And because of the plugin architecture that Zap has, it means people can implement completely niche things and not affect everyone else. So, if we need more enablers in the core to support these use cases, that's fine by us. But what we do in the Zap core team is typically we have a meeting after we do a major release, and we kind of talk about the things we want to get in the next release. But we also have weekly meetings, weekly calls where we discuss what we're doing and what we want to focus on. We tend to have different roles. So Ricardo, THC 202, he's great at all the build stuff and a lot of the core structural parts of Zap. He's really made sure that that's as solid as it can be. Rick King Thorin, he tends to go through and pick up a lot of the things that the rest of us kind of forget about, or things that were not quite so exciting, but things that needs to be progressed, and just cleaning up the edges and implementing some of the handle turning things that otherwise don't get handled, and that's really useful. I often go for the kind of the latest, greatest, biggest things. So things like the automation framework. But it's really a question of, we're trying to work out what's the most useful thing that most people will help most people. And this is difficult because we don't always get as much feedback as we'd like. But the feedback we get kind of implies that Zap is used a lot in automation, and we know it's one of its strengths, and we want to build on that. So that's definitely a focus for us. But if you think there's something more important we should be working on, then just get online and argue your case. We've got the IRC channel, we've got the user groups. Come in and convince us we should be doing something different. And that's one advantage of working on an open source project like this. If something happens and something changes, we can change direction very quickly. Things like the GitHub actions, they were announced, and one of the students working on Zap saying, well, these look fun. Can I work on them? It's like, yes, please, start right away. And so Zap was the first DAS tool to actually have any GitHub actions available. And we got contacts in the GitHub team, security team, so they get authorized and everything. And we made sure that, we weren't doing anything that they weren't happy with. So we can, we never have enough people working on things, but if something comes up, we can try and change direction and focus on something very quickly.
Awesome. Simon, Prince Mendriata. I think I got that one right. Pronunciation. Simon and I were just chatting earlier before this started that I'm not using the King's English, and so that's why I mispronounce everything wrong. So that you have to forgive me. Question is, does using the automation framework overrunning Zap in daemon mode allow for a qualitative breakthrough in Zap implementation automation? He didn't say automation, I added that.
So Zap is still doing the same things. So it doesn't matter if you're controlling Zap from the desktop user interface, whether you're controlling it from the heads-up display, whether you're controlling it from the automation framework, or you can controlling it from the API in daemon mode. The underlying things, if you run the spider, it'll do exactly the same things. I think the question is how easy it is. And I'll just stop this cat from walking on my keyboard.
I was going to say, hey, I think Santa Claus is in your room, but apparently it's the cat.
Yeah, she was bound to step on something which would cause problems. So, I think it's how easy it is to get started with and how easy it is to use and to extend. The package scans people have found really useful, but once they start trying to do things outside of that kind of narrow focus, then it gets harder. And the API is, you can do anything, so where do you start? I think the automation framework is something which people will hopefully be able to start using quite easily, and then we'll grow with them. And we do need the user interface on top of it. At the moment, we'll generate YAML files for you, and then you've got to go and edit them by hand. And what the user interface will give you is, it means you'll be able to configure things in the desktop, which with automation, we tend to say, test things with the desktop. You can see what's going on, and then convert that into the API. But we don't provide any tools for generating those API commands, so it's quite difficult. With the automation framework, we'll be able to say, okay, configure it with the desktop, get it all working, then press a button, and it will say, do you want to include these contexts? Do you want to run the active scan the same way? Do you want to use the same things? By the default will be, do just what I've done, and that will create an automation plan for you, and you'll be able to rerun it. And what we've got is these new tests as part of the automation framework. And these are things you could have done before, but they're much more complicated to do. So one of the first tests we've got is just tests on statistics. So you'll be able to query any of the integer or long statistics to see whether they are greater than something, less than something, equal to something, which might not sound too interesting, but a good example is things like the spider. So when we run the spider, we maintain statistics about things like the number of URLs we find. So you'll be able to add to test to say, if there are less than, say, 100 URLs found, then fail the job, because you expect the spider to find more than 100 URLs. And that's really powerful, because it means something's changed and something's gone wrong. Something is different from what you expect. Another really good example is authentication. We maintain authentication stats, the number of requests that appear to be logged in, the number of requests that appear to be logged out. You'll be able to check that that you've actually got as many logged in requests as you expect, or the proportions, more than 70% of requests are authenticated. I had a case years ago when I was doing authenticated scans against a Mozilla website, and that broke. And I knew it broke because I had one of these tests in there, and it broke because they changed the authentication mechanism. They actually threw one out and put a different one in. Of course, my tests then failed. So it's really good for picking those things up. But we'll be adding more tests to make sure, so you can test things like URLs exist. So you can actually say, well, did we actually find this particular URL? Because this is a good indication that we have authenticated successfully. So we'll make it very easy to add these kind of tests, so sanity checks, to make sure that things are doing what you expect. And that's one problem with automation, is you configure everything and you kick it off, and then unless you keep an eye on things, you don't know whether it worked or not, or whether something changed, and you're just hitting the login page all the time. So we're adding these tests, and we'll make it much easier to add them and to maintain them, and that will give you a good idea that things are progressing as you expect. And I think that's key. So I think the ease of use and maintainability of these automation plans will be a significant change, and will make things a lot easier for everyone.
Yeah. If I understand it right, I feel like this is an exponential addition to Zap, because not only can you use the automation framework in just regular Zap daemon mode, like you can kick off Zap, local machine, whatever. But if I'm understanding correctly, you can also instrument that in a container. So you can run that container wherever as well with the Zap automation framework. So there's a ton of new accessibility and automation capabilities that Simon and the core team are working on. It's super exciting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're getting a lot of feedback from people about automation and a lot of requests. And I think automation is one of the Zap strengths, but we're building on top of it. We want to make it even better. So if you've got any requests or suggestions about automation, then let me know, please.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, there's a new question in here. Great question about, is Zap able to scan GRPC microservices?
GRPC, what are those?
Yeah. Google, man, I know what they are. I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head because you put me on the spot. However, it's basically a different kind of API, Google RPC services. I think the answer to this, I know you know this, is need to have support for HTTP v2 or HTTP 2.
Right. Yeah. If it requires that, then yes. Just have a quick look.
GRPC. So I know that we use GRPC at Stackhawk, and we front GRPC with REST API as well. So our GRPC services are fronted by REST API. Obviously, we can test that because that's the open API spec stuff. If you're trying to test GRPC directly, Zap currently doesn't have HTTP 2 support in the core, so you can't test GRPC directly today. But I know that we'll love to get networking HTTP 2 support into the core, right?
Yeah, that's something that's been worked on for a while. It's not there yet, but the one thing we've had, something's changed in OWASP, is we can actually, it's easier to raise funds and to fund work via OWASP. So I'm really hoping to be able to fund one of the core Zap team members to actually implement this, to be able to focus on the networking, because that's something we've wanted being done for a while.
Awesome. Great questions. Hey, everybody, if you're joining us on YouTube, don't forget to join us in Discord as well and ask questions that you have for Simon as long as we're live. If you're watching this recorded, you could still ask Simon questions in the user group or in the Discord channel here in the Zap chat, or lots of other places to be able to get in here. Someone has reminded me that GRPC is Google Remote Procedure Call. My days of Windows and RPC have made me forget what RPC stands for forever. Anyway, let's see. Here we go. Ath0 asked, is Zap going to be refactored in Go, and is that heretical?
So we have a frequently asked question about, will you rewrite Zap in my favorite language? And the answer is no. But basically, Most users don't actually care what Zap is written in, and the core team we're Java developers, and yeah, if I was going to start a new project from scratch, I probably wouldn't choose Java now, but to rewrite, we've been working on Zap for over 10 years now. If we started rewriting it in a different language, it would be many, many years before it even caught up with where Zap is now. And everyone would have got bored and would want to use something else. So sorry, no. I mean, the thing is, if you want to actually run scripting languages, Zap has got a really powerful scripting interface. So you can run all sorts of scripting languages within Zap, but the chances of us rewriting Zap are zero, basically.
Well, there you go. There's the answer to that. So I think you can take Go and replace it with Rust or, I don't know, handlebars. I don't know, anything. And then the answer is no. But that doesn't stop you from being a Go master and rewriting it yourself if you really want to undertake that.
Actually, but there's a Go client library for Zap, which I wrote a while ago. So, we're certainly not saying Java is the best technology for everything. It's just one of the good ones. And when Zap was, started Zap 10 years ago, and obviously it's before that Paros, that was an ideal choice.
Yeah, awesome. Rutom asked, what's the upcoming roadmap for Zap? And I know you have a really long answer to this, but I want to make sure that you cover everyone's favorite question. Is there a Zap as a service in the works?
Yeah, so the roadmap is very much, kind of what we're focusing on at the moment. So, reporting is something that, it's getting to there where we're getting to the stage we want it to. The automation framework is a big part of the roadmap. I'm really hoping that the database replacement layer that a contributor is working on, that'll be great to get in. The networking is something, and obviously we've got the Google Summer of Code, projects, all those things I've mentioned before. Zap as a service is something we did kind of announce quite a long time ago. I think it's 2004 or something, and basically we tried and we found out we didn't have enough time or people in the Zap team. And it's a huge amount of work. So, what we've found out is that we're better off focusing on the core Zap engine. And there are a whole load of projects, both commercial and open source, that are using Zap. And some of those are providing essentially Zap as a service, and that includes Stack.org. So I don't see the Zap core team working on a Zap as a service, but we really want to make sure that Zap plays as well as possible in that environment. So we're implementing changes and making sure it's as robust and scalable to work in that environment. And Zap is a core engine behind lots of different services, and we want to make it the default one for anyone who wants to use an open source Dast engine.
Awesome. Great answer. I know there's some more coming up on how to help influence roadmap and stuff, but since you mentioned Stackhawk, maybe it's time for a sponsor break, don't you think?
Definitely.
Okay, great. So maybe everyone knows, or maybe they don't, ZAPCon and ZAPCon After Hours and a lot of these resources that are coming out, the videos that Simon's doing, the Zap deep dive videos, which you can also find on YouTube. It's all sponsored by Stackhawk. So Stackhawk is trying to take that Zap engine and turn it into a thing that's highly repeatable. You can manage all the reports. You don't have to build a sweet user interface because we already did that. But the ability to have repeatability, track things over time, all the things that Zap kind of struggles with a little bit, that's what Stackhawk was built for. So if you're looking for Zap as a service, Stackhawk is a really good option there. I want to say it's the best option, but I'm highly biased. But we also have a free plan for an application. So if you're looking to get started or try out Stackhawk and see how that can help you upscale, how you keep track of application security bugs, triage things, keep track of what's going on there, push issues to Jira, etc. Please try out the Stackhawk free plan. It's free for testing one application. And if you need more than that, obviously we're here to help. Stackhawk actually really likes Zap. We're in committed to helping build this community out, as is obvious by the Discord channel and the chats and the Ask Me Anything and all that good stuff. So if you have any questions about that, you can definitely hit us up in the Discord as well. You can hit info@stackhawk.com as well if you'd like some more info. We'll be happy to answer any questions. Okay, enough of the promotion stuff. Here we go, back to more questions. Let's see, who else has a question? Mohammed has a good question. He's been asking a lot of questions, but I think this is a good one. And I think his question is, how do I get started if I'm new to Zap? How do I first figure out how to run Zap, what to test against, etc.? And I think you have some good answers to that, and I've got some input too.
Sure. So we do have a getting started guide. So have a look on the website. That's included with Zap as well. And I mean, I think it's, if you're worried about using it against, your own applications, download one of the kind of deliberately vulnerable applications. They're great to play around with. There's things like OWASP Juice Shop. And actually we have on OWASP, there's a project just for vulnerable web applications. So I'm one of the project leads on that. So there's loads out there. We try and document as many as possible. But you can either run it against your own services. If you're running Zap on something that is running on your own machine, or you've got permission to test, then there's no problem at all. But obviously, you should be very careful. We shouldn't be running. You shouldn't be using Zap in attacking anything that you don't have permission to test. But yeah, start off with the Zap desktop. It's a great way to learn about Zap and to see what's going on. But also, if you want to get into automation, then the package scans are probably the best way, or the GitHub Docker actions and the package scans are really, really good places to start. And the automation framework will be, but I said it's a bit early doors yet. So Scott, with any other things you'd suggest?
Yeah, I think some of the people that we talk to occasionally get stuck on getting the vulnerable application to run. So there's some hosted ones out there. The Google firing range is actually a pretty good one. So you can just fire up Zap and point it at Google firing range. It's meant to be tested like that. There's another, I can't remember the name of it. It's online bank. It's like a fake online bank. You can test that one as well. So you don't have to worry about getting the vulnerable application up and running. You can just point Zap at those things. However, don't point Zap at stuff you don't own. It's not explicitly intended to be scanned. You can get yourself in trouble. That's just the only disclaimer I have on that. So if you can run those things locally, that's the best option. If you're struggling with that and you just want a really quick refresher, Google firing range is a really good option. And all of this stuff is getting linked in the Discord. So if you're just watching on YouTube, we've got links to most of these things in Discord. There is a question on the YouTube chat. P.S. If you're in YouTube chat, come join us on Discord. We're hanging out. It's a party over here. About automating Zap in Spinnaker. Any idea how that can work?
What's Spinnaker?
Yeah, Spinnaker is a CI/CD system.
And it runs Java applications. I mean, that's the main thing, or containers.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're trying to do is make sure that, Zap can run if you've got a JVM, or if you've got any support for any container technology that can run a JVM, which covers most of them, to be honest. So that's the kind of, we maintain the Docker images ourselves, but that's about it. So other than that, I said, if there's containers you think we should support directly, then let us know and help us out with that. But yeah, basically JVM or a container with a JVM.
Yeah, so there is an answer to this, and the answer is yes. Stackhawk actually wrote a blog and a configuration guide for how to run Stackhawk in Spinnaker, which translates pretty one-to-one to how to run Zap in Spinnaker. So we just linked that blog into the Discord channel. If you read through that, you can probably figure out how to make Zap work in Stackhawk or in Spinnaker. However, if you also want to make Stackhawk work in Spinnaker, again, the free plan is a really good place to start. What else do we have for questions? Let's see. Oh, you know what? I really want to talk about the survey, Simon. I know you sent out a survey early in the year, and you just posted a blog yesterday about results from the survey. Talk about the survey, talk about the next survey, how does that help influence what Zap is doing?
Yeah, so I mean, I often do complain about not getting enough feedback. And so, maybe we actually need to ask more, because we did get a load of really good feedback from the survey. And, I think we've had surveys for quite a long time. But the most recent one, I think, based on some advice, I think you were saying that, Scott, about having it more focused and shorter. So that's what we tried this time. And we're really focusing on how people get news about Zap. And that was really useful. So it was much more focused. And what we've done in the blog post is kind of go into a bit more detail. So it's, things like how people want to get their news, what type of documentation they're looking for, what we document well and badly. So, we asked the questions, we've got a load of answers, and we're going to do things differently. I mean, not majorly. I think one thing I was really pleased to see was quite a lot of people actually use the Zap docs and are happy with them. And that's actually a big change. So a few years ago, you could validly say that the Zap docs were awful. Luckily, we've had some contributions, quite a few contributions, and one of them was actually the Google Season of Docs, which added the API docs. And we finally got our act together and got the website, because before that we tended to use the GitHub wiki, and the wiki it was a bit of a mess. That's what happens to wikis. So what we've been doing is we've got it's no longer new, we've got zaproxy.org, and we've been migrating content and trying to put good quality content on there, so it's well structured and hopefully easier to find. So the documentation, people seem to be much happier. We know it's not perfect. We've been doing a lot of videos, and been doing those through particularly the deep dive ones with StackOrg now. So there's a lot more video content, but it turns out people want both videos and articles. So, which makes sense. Different things work at different times for different people, and sometimes different times the same people. So I think we need to focus on more articles, and there's definite requests for more on scripting, and I've done quite a few videos on scripting, but very few articles. And so I think we need to do much more, high quality articles, more blog posts, and tie them together so that the videos and the articles kind of work hand in hand, so you can use one or other or both. But that's we found that really useful. There's been some great feedback, and there are a few things about one of the questions was in there is, when are you going to support dark mode? We've already got a dark mode. We often get requests for things that we already support. So I'll have to check to see whether that person left an email address and tell them directly. But yeah, we had some very good and some very positive feedback, which was nice to get, because we often, like most open source projects, you hear about the complaints when things go wrong, and not enough people tell you when things go well. So it's good to hear that things are working for people.
Yeah, awesome. How about the next survey?
Well, this one's been so successful, we definitely need to do another one. That will be, we haven't decided what's going to be, but we're working on that. I mean, I like the idea of a focus survey, which is relatively short, so people can make sure that can fit it in quite quickly. And then again, we want to run it for a period of time, 6 months or so, and then close it and analyze results and publish what the results are and what we're going to do differently. So we are listening. We want to get your feedback, and you don't have to wait for a survey. You can contact us directly in the user group, Twitter, IRC, all those wonderful things. But yeah, we will be having another survey very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I love I really like the survey, and I love that you guys are talking back to the community. Here's what happened in the survey. Here's what we're changing based on your feedback. So it's really, if you want to influence how Zap works or what documentation there is or how they document stuff, that survey is a great place to get a chance to be able to get feedback in there and influence roadmap and documentation and all kinds of good stuff. So I love that that Zap is doing that. Sounds like maybe twice a year.
Could well be, but also keep it. Follow both myself, Sign On, and ZA Proxy on Twitter. I actually started a Twitter poll today. So this was actually somebody was on Discord, and they pointed out that the Zap stable Docker image, if you run some of the security tools against it, it reports a load of known problems. And the reason is because the Zap stable Docker image was generated in December when we did the last Zap release. So the poll is whether we should actually update that image in between doing main releases. So should we actually update it either with just pulling the new base image or updating both the base image and the Zap add-ons? Now, the Zap add-ons we get from the marketplace. So if you run the package scans, then you can actually, they will be updated. But if you're using the Zap API, you have to do that yourself or choose to do it from the command line. So we would like to know, and that's another thing we'd like to know. So keep an eye out on Twitter for the polls. And it's just got a bit dark here. See if that light.
I know what happened. Did the sun go away or where you are?
The sun went away. Yeah.
Awesome. That's super good information. I really like that as a feedback mechanism. And then all the Twitter resources and obviously the Google groups, all the stuff that you can find under the community tab on zaproxy.org. For those that don't speak the King's English like Simon does when he says zaproxy.org.
Z-attack proxy.
Yeah, he means zaproxy.org. Okay, enough language trolling. Okay, Rutham has a really good question. I think it's a great question. What's your favorite thing about Zap?
Ooh, that's hard. I think actually it's probably the people. So it's the core team, it's the contributors, it's the Zap community. It's been great. It has opened so many doors for myself. And yeah, the technology is really fun, but yeah, it's meeting people and working with some really great people, and working with a whole load of students from Google Summer of Code and other things. Yeah, so surprisingly, I'd actually say the people.
Awesome. Community is your favorite part.
Definitely.
Great. Let's see. Kay asked I'm going to start off with this PS for me. When I said you can get yourself in trouble running active scanning on a website without explicit permission, how much trouble are we talking about here? And this ranges from, hey, knock it off, to your local version of the FBI knocking on your door. So if you don't have explicit permission to run active scanning on a website, don't do it. That's pretty much the simple part of that.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's well worth pointing out that quite a few companies have bug bounty programs. And if they do, they're basically saying that they do want you to have a look for vulnerabilities, but they don't necessarily want you to use automated tools. So have a look at the bug. If, at Mozilla, we did have a bug bounty program, but, have a look at those bug bounty programs and see whether you're okay using automated tools or whether you should just do manual Zap testing. But be aware that, if they're bug bounty programs, then probably a lot of people are using automated tools. So you might not find particularly new things. But yeah, really, stick to sites you have permission to test is our advice and guidance.
Now for Kay's real question. When you create a new scan rule, how do you find relevant sites for testing? Let's talk about passive scan rules since we can't really use active scanning without explicit permission. So how do you find relevant sites for testing with passive scan rules? Well, that's loaded. That's a loaded question right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think with scan rules in general, what we'll do is we will, first research as much as possible the vulnerability. Then we will typically look for deliberately vulnerable applications that might include it. So those are ones which, that they're good because we can run them locally or whatever, and we will have permission to test them because we'll be running our own instances. But after that, what we tend to do is we try and recreate them ourselves. So we try and create the vulnerabilities. And we actually, and as part of the, we have unit tests, and for the both passive and active, well, passive scan rules, we kind of can just pass in request and response data. For the active scan rules, the unit tests do actually fire up a web server, a very simple web server. So we have to implement those vulnerabilities one way or another as part of the unit tests. And I mean, that's one good thing about, we haven't got enough unit tests, but we didn't used to have any. So we've actually got a lot more than that. And recently I saw a tweet from somebody who said, they actually learned a lot more from ZAP unit tests and from various unit test books that they were reading, which I was really pleased to see. So, we tend to, even if we find an example in the wild, we still have to create our own examples to try all different combinations. You're not going to find something in the wild or in a test application that has all the different variants, because we want to test for the different possibilities and the false positives, the false negatives, all these things. So or not the false negatives, we're trying to all different variations. So in the end, you'd kind of tend to have to create the vulnerabilities in a simple test app yourself.
Yeah, a good place to start with that is maybe something like Google firing range, or something that's intentional, so that you can either develop or see how those passive scan rules might work. I think that's a really decent place to start, or one of the vulnerable apps that we linked in the Discord channel.
So we'll actually also mention the OWASP vulnerable app, which is a relatively new one, but the project lead there is actually involved with ZAP as well, and he's very happy to get new pull requests. So he'll help you out if you want to contribute to new vulnerabilities to that app. So that's quite a few of the vulnerable apps are no longer maintained, whereas that one definitely is. So that's a good one to contribute to.
Awesome. Let's see, we're right at the top of the hour, Simon. So I think we're kind of out on questions. If you want to ask Simon more questions after this, or after we've ended, or you're watching this later, you can definitely hit us up in the Discord, ZAPCon Discord channel, the Simon Bennett's Ask Me Anything in the ZAPCon After Hours section. You can ask more questions there. The Zap chat channel that's in there as well also works. So I think we'll wrap it up there. I just want to say thank you to Simon. It's been a pleasure fielding some of these questions from the community. Everyone hearts the fact that you love the Zap community the most about Zap. So I also think that that's really cool. Thank you, Simon, for taking the time to answer all these great questions. I do want to remind everyone that asked questions, we're going to do a random drawing after this is over and draw for some ZAPCon swag. So maybe you can get yourself in there. Thank you for asking great questions. If you asked a question and we asked it live to Simon here, we'll definitely get you into that drawing on YouTube and in Discord. And then we should let the winner know by Friday, I think is what Rebecca is telling me. So some more ZAPCon swag coming out here shortly. Anything else you want to say, Simon?
Thank you very much for everyone who's asked questions, and thank you for using Zap and being involved in the community.
Awesome. That's it for this ZAPCon Ask Me Anything, ZAPCon After Hours. We've got some more ZAPCon After Hours kind of in the works. We'll be working on what the content looks like. And then don't forget ZAPCon 2022 should have call for papers coming out here in Q3 sometime, more than likely. So if you've got ideas about how you want to talk about Zap or cool things that you've done with Zap, don't forget to watch out for the call for papers. And if you actually do have cool things that you want to talk about Zap, there's also Zap success stories that you can submit to Simon. So get those published on zaproxy.org as well. That's it, Simon. Thanks for spending an hour with me. I know it was a good time. It was fun to ask all these questions, get a lot of great answers, a lot of interaction from ZAPCon community. So thank you so much. And if you're checking us out live, join us on Discord. We're having a good time.
Thanks a lot, folks. See you.